It was supposed to be just a simple birthday celebration. Nothing too fancy, just a small gathering with my closest friends. I didn't want anything big this year. Life had been exhausting, and I wasn't in the mood for an elaborate party. So I planned a dinner at home with a few people, keeping it low-key. The evening started out fine. My friends trickled in one by one. There were only 5 of us, and we gathered around a table, laughing and sharing stories. It was comfortable, like any other small get-together. I had ordered pizza, and we had a couple of beers, nothing wild. I remember looking at the time. It was almost 9 p.m. when the doorbell rang. "I didn't think you invited anyone else?" Sarah asked, her brows furrowed. "I didn't," I replied. "Everyone's already here." We all exchanged puzzled looks. It was a weekday, and my place isn't the kind where random people show up. I lived in a quiet neighborhood, and the doorbell ringing at this time felt odd. I stood up and walked to the door. When I looked through the peephole, there was a man standing there. He was wearing a baseball cap, pulled low over his eyes, and had a dark jacket on. He was shifting his weight from one foot to the other, looking impatient. "Who is it?" asked Michael from the table. "I don't know," I answered quietly. I was hesitant to open the door, but it didn't seem right to ignore it either. I cracked the door open slightly, just enough to talk. "Can I help you?" The man looked up at me, and I could see his face for the first time. He had this weird, empty expression, like he wasn't fully there. His eyes were dull, almost lifeless, and his skin was pale. "I'm here for the party," he said flatly. I froze for a moment. My mind raced. I hadn't invited this man. I didn't recognize him at all. I think you got the wrong house," I said. "There's no party here." He didn't move, just stood there, staring at me like I hadn't spoken. "You sure?" "I was told there's a birthday party here." I felt a chill run down my spine. He didn't blink, didn't smile, nothing. Just stared. "Yeah, I'm sure." "You got the wrong place," I said a little more firmly, and started closing the door. Before I could shut it completely, his hand shot out and grabbed the edge of the door. My heart skipped. "What's going on?" Sarah called out from the living room, but I couldn't answer. My mouth had gone dry. The man leaned closer, pushing slightly against the door. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper now, but there was something off about it. "No," I said, my voice trembling. I yanked the door shut, locking it quickly. My hands were shaking as I stepped back. I could hear him outside, just standing there. "What the hell was that?" Michael asked, getting up from his chair. I couldn't explain it, but something about the whole situation felt wrong. Really wrong. I was about to tell them what happened when the doorbell rang again. This time, it was more aggressive. He rang it several times, each ring faster than the last. My heart pounded in my chest, and I knew we couldn't just sit there. "I'm calling the cops," I said, grabbing my phone. I dialed 911, trying to keep my voice steady as I told the operator what's happening. By the time I hung up, the ringing had stopped, but I could hear movement outside. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. We turned off the lights, hoping to make it seem like no one was home anymore. My friends were silent, and I could feel the tension in the air. Minutes passed, feeling like hours, and then a knock. This knock was different, slow, methodical, almost like he was mocking us. I checked the peephole again, and this time he wasn't standing at the door. Instead, he was just out of sight, maybe waiting for me to open it again. "What's he doing?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't know," I replied. "But he's not leaving." We waited for what felt like forever. Then the sound of distant sirens finally broke the silence. Relief washed over me as I heard the cops arriving. I opened the door just enough to see the flashing lights down the street, but the man was gone. The officers took our statements, but there wasn't much they could do. They said they patrol the area, but without a crime, there wasn't much to follow up on. The party was over after that. My friends left, still shaken, and I locked every window and door in the house. I didn't sleep that night, every little sound making my heart race. He didn't come back that night, but every time the doorbell rings, I get that same sinking feeling. I had always loved my birthday. It was the one time of the year when my friends and family gathered around me, showering me with attention. This year was going to be special because I was turning 25, and I wanted to make it a memorable one. I sent out invitations to everyone I knew. Old friends, new friends, coworkers, even some neighbors. A big party at my place. The first sign that something was off came a week before the party. I had mailed out all my invitations, but one of them got returned. The envelope was crumpled, and across the front, someone had scribbled, "Don't." I stood in my kitchen, staring at the red ink, my heart thudding a little too fast. Was this some kind of joke? Maybe one of my friends thought it would be funny. I shrugged it off, tossed the envelope in the trash, and moved on. The week passed quickly, and the day of the party arrived. I spent the morning decorating, cooking, and making sure everything was perfect. Around 7 p.m., the guests started arriving. It was a small but lively group, just how I liked it. People were laughing, drinking, and catching up. That's when I noticed him. A man I didn't know standing near the edge of the room, holding a glass of something. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, and didn't seem to be talking to anyone. I figured maybe he was someone's plus one. I'd invited a lot of people after all. I approached him with a smile. "Hey, I don't think we've met. I'm Jake." He looked at me for a second, his expression blank. Then, almost too softly to hear, he said, "You shouldn't have invited me." The room felt suddenly colder, but I laughed it off, assuming it was some kind of weird joke. "Sorry if I didn't recognize you. Are you a friend of someone here?" He didn't answer. He just stared at me for a few seconds more, then turned and walked into the crowd. I felt a strange chill run down my spine, but I brushed it off. It was my birthday after all. I couldn't let some awkward guy ruin it. As the night wore on, more people arrived, and the party became busier. The music was loud, people were dancing, and I got caught up in the fun. At one point, I noticed the guy in the coat again, standing in the corner, watching. But I didn't think too much of it. He wasn't causing trouble, just standing there. By midnight, the party was starting to wind down. Most of my guests had left, and I was saying goodbye to the last few when I realized I hadn't seen the man in the coat leave. I scanned the room but didn't see him. Then I checked the kitchen, the bathroom, and even outside in the backyard, but he was gone. Relieved, I started cleaning up, picking up empty bottles and cups. As I reached for a cup sitting on the living room table, I noticed something underneath it. It was a folded piece of paper. I picked it up, unfolded it, and my heart nearly stopped. It was my original invitation, the one that had been returned to me, with "Don't" scrawled across it. Only now the writing had changed. Someone had crossed out the word "don't" and written "too late." I stared at the paper, my hands trembling. Who was this guy? What did he want? And how did he get into my party? I rushed to the door, double-checking that it was locked, and then went to every window, making sure they were secure. As I moved through the house, I realized how quiet it had become. Too quiet. It was that kind of silence that made you aware of every creak and shift in the house. Every sound seemed amplified, the hum of the fridge, the wind outside, even the ticking of the clock. I was exhausted, but too unnerved to sleep. I sat on the couch, my eyes darting around the room, trying to shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every so often, I thought I heard something, a soft tap, the sound of a door creaking. I told myself it was just my imagination. Finally, around 2 a.m., I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone, thinking I'd call a friend to come over and stay the night. But as I unlocked the screen, I froze. A new message had popped up. "Happy birthday. See you soon. No number. No name." Just those words. I looked around the room again, heart pounding. He had been in my house. Maybe he still was. I wasn't excited about turning 27. Birthdays lose their charm after a while, and I wasn't really in the mood for a celebration. But my friends wouldn't have it. They insisted on throwing me a small surprise party at my place. So I played along, smiled, and said I'd be home around 7 p.m. That day at work dragged. By the time I got home, I just wanted to relax, maybe watch a movie alone. But as I walked up to my front door, I could see lights on through the blinds. My heart sank a little. I wasn't sure why, but I had this strange feeling something was off. I shook it off, just birthday nerves, I told myself. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The house was dark except for a few dim lights in the living room. No one jumped out to yell surprise, like I expected. Instead, the house was eerily quiet. "Hello," I called out, trying to hide the unease in my voice. "Guys," no answer. I flipped on the lights, scanning the room. There were balloons and some streamers half-heartedly hung, but no people. The smell of something burnt lingered in the air. I walked further into the living room, and that's when I saw it. A cake half finished on the table. It looked like someone had taken a bite and then just stopped. A chair had been knocked over, as if someone had gotten up quickly. My stomach tightened. This wasn't right. Maybe they went outside for smoke, I thought. Or they were playing a joke on me. But there was no laughter, no footsteps, nothing. I walked towards the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar. As I pushed it open, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a knife on the counter, smeared with what looked like blood. A few drops had splattered on the floor. My mind raced. What happened here? I backed out of the kitchen, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. It was a text from Sarah, one of my friends who was supposed to be here. We're running late. Be there in 15 minutes. Can't wait to celebrate. My blood for us. If they weren't here yet, then who was? I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to get out of the house. But as I turned toward the front door, I heard something, a soft shuffle, like someone moving in the back of the house. My legs felt like lead, but I forced myself to move quietly, stepping towards the hallway. The hallway stretched out long and dark. The noise came from the guest bedroom at the end. The door was open, just a crack. I could see a shadow shifting inside. Every fiber of my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave without knowing who or what was in my house. I reached for the closest thing I could find, a heavy lamp from the side table, and crept towards the room. My breath was shaky, my hands slick with sweat. As I got closer, I could hear something else now, soft breathing. It was steady, almost calm. I nudged the door open with my foot, raising the lamp, ready to defend myself. There, sitting on the edge of the bed, was a man. He wasn't anyone I recognized. He was older, maybe in his 50s, wearing a dirty flannel shirt. His hands were stained, and he had a strange, blank look on his face. He didn't move when he saw me, just stared at me with those dull eyes. I didn't say anything either, my heart slamming in my chest. Then, in the most calm, chilling voice, he spoke. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin the cake." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. All I could do was slowly back out of the room, not taking my eyes off him. As soon as I was out of sight, I bolted for the front door, slamming it behind me. I ran to the street and dialed 911, my hand shaking. When the police arrived, they found the man still sitting on the bed, as if nothing had happened. He didn't resist when they took him away. I never found out who he was or how he got in. The cake, the knife, the blood, it all seemed like some kind of nightmare. But it wasn't. It was real, painfully real. The cops said it could have been worse, that I was lucky. But I didn't feel lucky. I couldn't shake the thought of what could have happened if I hadn't come home when I did. That was my 27th birthday. I haven't celebrated one since.